Hi, this is Psychosomatic from Astral Connections again. Here with me I have Denis Berry. Denis Berry is certified in more than one modality. One, remote viewing, and the other is psychosomatic therapy. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Denis the Psycho. Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me, Charles.
Absolutely.
And let's give yourself a handshake where I encompass your hand with my heart.
Thank you. Thanks, Denis.
Thank you.
So tell us, Denis, tell us about yourself. Before we talk about psychosomatic therapy and before we talk about remote viewing, tell us about Denis.
Okay.
Where did Denis grow up?
Well, I grew up in Ireland. I spent almost 18 years of my life there. And
Yeah, I see Irish.
the green eyes from the green fields. I lived in the country and came from a family of 6 and a practicing Catholic mom and dad. And we used to go to church, but you know, and church and religion has a place in my life. And I believe every religion is right. They're all saying the same thing.
Could fool me, but that's okay.
They are. They're just
No,
at some
no,
point
I know they are.
connect.
Could have fooled me that you believe that.
But yes, my mom was a hardcore Catholic and didn't believe in birth control, and you know, had 6 kids. we had to compete for the bathtub and.
So how many brothers and sisters are you?
3 brothers and 2 sisters.
Oh,
Yes,
cool.
and we're all here in Canada.
And are you the youngest?
No, I'm the 3rd oldest.
Wow,
Yeah.
neat.
But I knew there was something different about me when I was growing up. In fact,
Only you.
my grandma used to know that I was special. And my other family members, brothers and sisters, they picked up on this, and they used to call me the golden boy because my grandma used to treat me special, and she, you know, used to kind of give me that extra nurturing.
I think there's a sign when your grandmas treat you special. My grandma treated me special too.
And you know, since she has passed on, I know that she's there on the other side, always by my side, and I only realized this in the last couple of years.
So what did you study, Denis? Or did you?
Well, I started out. Well, we immigrated to Canada here in '91. Let's backtrack to my days in Ireland.
Okay.
I ended up practicing Irish dancing, and I remember being teased as a little boy about dancing with the girls, and so I had quit.
At least you were dancing with girls.
And instead of continuing in my passion of dancing, I allowed you know, the boys in my class and in my small town to convince me to do otherwise and give up dancing. And something similar happened with I used to sing in the church choir as well, and singing for me was a form of expression, and letting my let's call it the feminine side of me out. And later in life I was to find out that, hey, because I was not expressing myself in the way that I was designed to, and we'll talk about that shortly, about our throat chakra and blockages and that, and how it affects the rest of our body. After about 20 years later, I refound my singing ability again, and discovered that through doing energy work with chakras, my throat chakra. It was
Back in Ireland?
No, this is here in Canada. This, the time and space is all one big clump.
Because I know you took me back to Ireland, we were dancing, and now we're back in Canada. Okay.
We're back in Canada. And I rediscovered that, singing and expression of my voice and tone, and it's basically coming from the soul space and the heart space. Just letting that vent, for lack of a better word, expressing myself. I can let a lot of things go, and it's all pertaining to emotional release. And when I talk about emotional release, us as being human beings, and I'll just talk from my own experience, I used to hold on to a lot of emotions, and even the word emotion. I also have a scientific background, and I studied science and technology for several years, and practiced engineering as well. But is energy, and motion is motion. So emotion is energy in motion. And as human beings, we are...
Bashar said that before you did.
We're all saying the same thing. It's just our own interpretation of it, let's call it. And so as human beings, we go through this world and experience all these emotions, our energy in motion, and as the energy passes through us, through sound vibration, the energies of the universe, those energies get locked in our cells in a chemical form.
Yeah.
Right? And our bodies, particularly the tissue, is like a magnet for accumulating these energies.
Accumulating issues?
Well, let's call them issues. We can call them. They can eventually become issues in our tissues if we don't know that we're holding onto these. And so now we're getting into the realm of psychosomatics, and
how long have you been studying psychosomatic therapy for, and how did you discover psychosomatic therapy?
Well, I was led to psychosomatic therapy by following my intuition and taking a leap of faith into the unknown. And the story goes I was at the Health and Wellness Show in Vancouver in March of last year.
Can we backtrack just a little bit? You said
Sure.
you found psychosomatic therapy by following your intuition.
Yes.
Well, how did Denis become someone who follows his intuition, first of all?
Well, I went through a couple of steps of just waking up, and
Can you elaborate a little bit?
well, I always had intuition. I just hadn't followed it, and I did everything in my power to actually suppress it, and that included using drugs and alcohol and sex and every kind of distraction out there known to just distract myself from becoming conscious, so to speak. And finally, at some point in time, some of us say, "Hey, we've had enough," and so then we get our calling and slowly start to follow it. It's a slow process. And the analogy I make is we're like turtles. And every now and again, the turtle will stick her head out there and we'll go, oh. And we pull it back just because there's a little bit of fear, from putting it out there into the unknown. And so,
Was there an incident that happened in your life that made you wake up, like one specific incident, or was it over time? Little tiny incidents.
It was a sequence of events. There's no, I can't pinpoint any huge
Okay.
huge event.
So what led you to the health fair then?
I went there with a very good friend of mine, Raman, and her and I were on the same path. We actually ended up becoming roommates for a while, and we did a lot of partying together, and eventually gave that up. You know, we gave up the alcohol and the smoking of the cigarettes on the porch. We gave that up to find our higher self, and we did that by going through several forums. One of them actually, now as I recollect back, there's a forum out there called the Landmark Forum.
Yeah.
It's
I went to one of those sessions with a friend of mine too.
yeah, and it has its place, and was one of my first forums. Now as I look back at it, I probably go, oh my God, how come I ended up there? But it is definitely a forum for people that are making that transition, for sure. And from there I learned integrity. I learned about that, hey, you know, the world is not exactly the way it seemed it was, right? I was particularly running my life from everything that's on the outer world perspective, and I was later to find out that, hey, you know, I need to come back home to my body and view it from inside here. And so getting back to psychosomatics, I ended up at the Health and Wellness Fair and attended this presentation. It was about half an hour. It's by Carl Friesen out of Calgary. And she has a website and a company called Core Potentials. She comes down to Vancouver here at least once a year, and herself and this gentleman from Australia, Herman Mueller, teach the psychosomatic therapy course, and it's 10 days overall and goes on for 12 hours in the day.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you went through in that time?
Well, there's in the course itself, there's several, let's call it categories. We start off with step one, which is basically talking about psychosomatics and ties it in with quantum physics.
So define psychosomatics.
Well, psychosomatics is how our body, mind, and spirit act together as one to create this life's experience, this journey. And
So is there a body, mind, and spirit aspect to psychosomatic therapy?
There is.
Okay.
And in psychosomatics perspective unifies all three. It keeps all three together when we're doing the analysis.
So
Where's-
talk to me about psychosomatic therapy in those three sections. Like, what's the body part of it? What's the mind part of it? What's the spirit part of it?
Well, let's put it this way. The body, mind, and spirit will be. Let's backtrack for one sec. When it comes to Western society, we take our body to the doctor, we take our mind to the psychiatrist, and our spirit to the church, and none of these guys talk to each other.
I thought my body and mind came with me when I went to the church or the mosque.
Well,
I don't remember leaving them behind anywhere.
no, I'm just saying what a typical person does.
Okay.
And none of these guys talk to each other,
Right.
and so there's that disconnect there, and so we're slowly waking up to the fact that hey, you know, to treat any kind of dis-ease that we have. And it may not be a permanent disease, it might be something that's not making us at ease, right? Because it's actually where the word disease comes from, is when we're not at ease with something, and usually it comes up as a feeling in our body. And particularly if it's a resistance to a change, right? And as human beings, we go through this life and we evolve. And in order for us to change and evolve, we have to step outside of our comfortable zone. And I've got my own personal experience with this, with suffering. And my greatest suffering was always got to do with my resistance to change. Right? And when I went through this training, what showed up was each of my energy centers with the chakras, how my flesh, the quality and quantity of flesh, and then we can imagine flesh as being a slow forming energy, right? That actually can change over time. It's slow because as human beings we're pretty dense, but I have my own experience to actually changing my tissue quality and quantity, and I'm actually capable of moving it from one place to another if you believe that. People say to me, "Hey Denis, have I lost weight?" Well, first I say, well, I let it go. Because usually if you lose something, you might find it back again. So Psychosomatics also pays a lot of attention to the words that we use, because our words that we use resonate up and down our body and program our cells to...
That's a good point.
They program our cells to record and mold in that aspect. Another example I have of that is if I'm telling, if you're telling me something and I go, "Oh, I know." Well, really, that's me saying, "Yeah, no, I don't want to hear about it. I already know," right? And I know it has the word "no" in it. So if I really want to adapt what you're saying and program my body with it, because my body is a feeling part, then I would say I understand, or I stand under what you're saying. And so all of these things, language, body posture, basically program our body and our mind. And so I'll give an example of what I mean by posture from my own testament here. I used to stand, and I used to have my shoulders shrugged in front of me like this when I used to stand up in front of an audience, or even just in general. And I never really noticed that I did that until I went and I took this training. And it was pointed out to me that, hey, what I'm actually doing is I'm actually protecting my whole heart area here, my heart chakra. And the reason why I'm protecting is because I've had a huge heart. I have a huge heart, but at an early childhood, it
was inflicted with
inflicted with some emotional pain, and since then, I've been guarding it.
So Denis, you've mentioned the word chakras many times now in this conversation.
Yes.
Maybe you can define for those viewers who don't understand the concept of chakras, what chakras are.
Well, chakras, there's 7 main energy centers. Our our root chakra, which pertains to our grounding here on Earth, and we relate back money, stability on this Earth plane to our root chakra. And the next one up would be our sacral, and from there stems our creativity. And next up, our solar plexus chakra, and again we can relate our self-identity to that, our confidence to that. Then our heart chakra, we can relate our love, our desire and action to embrace life itself. And in psychosomatics, we also learned that in the heart area, the chest area, it's the bridge between the lower and the higher, and the breathing and the breath work is connects the lower with the higher, the body with the mind. And there's a technique in psychosomatics called gateway breathing, which allows us to physically envision the diaphragm moving down and, pushing down on all the organs below and massaging them, and just kind of coming back home to our bodies. We actually can get down there and start feeling it. And with that, we start to come back from outside, because you also see a lot of people with their heads out like this. And some of those people are actually visionaries, but at the same time, our head is out of our body, and what do you mean by that? Well, if we're to stand up, and it's probably difficult to see this from the camera, but from our ankle upwards, if we were to drop a plumb line from the ceiling from our ankle, how much of our body will be past the center line, as in past our ankle? And from the clients that I've had so far, they're usually about 80-20. That's 80% ahead of their front line, or that's 80% out of their body, in terms of the amount of volume that is beyond the center line. When I say the center line, that is when all the chakras are aligned and we are perfectly centered. That's when we are complete with the universe and as one. And I've got to spaces where I've got so centered that the whole world could be crashing around me, and it doesn't really have any effect on me.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
You understand the feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes to show that, hey, there's an outer world out there that, hey, we just get so distracted by it, into the computers or into the TV, or into other people's drama. But now I use psychosomatics to actually stay centered and stay grounded, right? And staying centered is kind of not like, like this. It's actually bringing awareness to all of our energy centers, and that includes, and I'll just stand up for a sec here and just give you a brief example. Is, how we might be, so we'll be the typical kind of posture we have.
It doesn't look very good.
Well, that's kind of how that's kind of like how I used to be. But
I don't remember that.
Basically, when we're at our sacral area and our solar plexus, what we're doing is, when it's out like this, we're actually have our identity and our creativity. We're giving it to the outer world instead of bringing it back to center and having a line with the root chakra and our chest, right? And similarly, you know, typically our head is out there, our mind is out of our body, so to speak, and so bringing that back and having everything aligned. Now, even just holding this posture brings awareness to, hey, I'm more present in this moment.
Right.
And I've used it several times. I work in the engineering business, and I lead up to a team of 14 engineers and designers. And I get a lot of drama, people coming to me saying, oh, you know, this is wrong, that's wrong. And, you know, when I'm aligned and centered, I notice they go calm right away. They just go, oh. And then I say to them, well, hey, how can we resolve this, right? And that's what psychosomatics does for me on a.
Can I grab your stool again?
No.
Please?
It's because I love to stand and move this beautiful vehicle. This beautiful vehicle, which we call our body.
And this is the same person who's the engineer, the scientist, and the one who had that playful life before, and now you're inwards versus outwards.
Well,
how does that happen?
How does that happen? Well, those experiences had to happen so that I could understand and help others. Right, because you know we can all go to university and get psychology degrees and not go through these experiences where we had a lot of drama and hurt and pain and agony and suffering in our life, and you know we can sit and have somebody on a sofa and nod our head and say, "Whoa, yeah, that kind of fits the textbook." But really, I've been through those experiences, and now I know why. And it's to help others learn and go and grow, and just allow my intuition as well to pick up on, hey, there's been a lot of cases where even just starting out in a session and just from talking with somebody, so I already feel what's coming up, you know,
right.
Whether a situation that the person has gone through, that they've kind of they've shoved it deep down into their subconscious, which is down in this area here, and are only maybe just a tiny little bit aware that it's there. But the psychosomatics, intuitively I see it, but then the psychosomatic portion also points out the tangible portion of it. Right? And when it's shown in terms of, you know, the tissue is hard there or soft there, or it's showing drainage or excess, right? Pretty much with every client that I've done a session with, they have nodded their head and said yes.
So,
right? And the reason for that happening is because in the psychosomatic session, it's basically an environment of compassion and of truth. Right? It's basically, you know, I open up a space of truth where, you know, there's no denying it. There's no pointing. There's no blame. There's no judgment. It's just, it is what it is.
well, psychosomatic therapy goes in to all kinds of things. I mean, I remember one day when you were here and you were talking about the art of reading faces. And is my understanding right that, your face actually tells a story?
It does. It tells a story. Face reading is basically how, first of all, it describes our disposition, and then it also describes our potential, right? And well, let's do a quick face reading on you here, Charles. With your forehead, right? We have
I'm thinking lots.
an observation, memory, and imagination, right? And your forehead goes relatively high, right? So you have high ideals, right? And that's all proportional to where the hairline ends, right? And because it's pretty straight up and down, you actually need to gather information from several different sources before you make a decision, right?
Yeah, it's true.
Whereas a person with a sloping forehead actually can make a decision more readily like that. When we come to your eyebrows,
yes.
my eyebrows? Oh, I forgot to mention, our face is a hologram of our body, right? And so here we have the mental, and from here to here is the emotional, and from here to here is our root, our earthly zone, right? And the eyebrows, they're actually a translator between our mind and our heart, between mental and emotional. So people with the curved eyebrows, they're more vivacious, more imaginative, right? And so the boomerang type people are independent and have strength of will, right? If you notice people, if they had straight eyebrows, they're more practical type people. They're the doers, right? And then there's other ones where we have the downwards, right? And it's kind of like, if you think of it in terms of energy flow.
I'm thinking Star Trek.
Of energy flow, it's basically our mind energy flowing down into our heart energy, and let's envision it as our mind sometimes may overpower our heart, right? And so we can instead of having a balance between our mind and our heart, which is what psychosomatics is about as well. It's actually what it's all about, is bringing back the balance between our mind versus our heart, rather than being driven by our mind, which I was driven by my mind. Let's get back to your face.
Okay, briefly.
Briefly. And so our eyes, this whole area here is our heart zone, right? And when it comes to the eyes are a very special part of us, because that's where we connect with the soul. And in psychosomatic therapy, it's a place where one soul...
Why'd you close your eyes? You want to look at my eyes?
No, I see your eyes. I'm just connecting with myself here. What we do is, it's one soul meeting another soul and saying, hi, I see you. Right? And I see you for who you are, because we're kids in adults' bodies, and as kids we've always growing up, what we wanted to do. We just wanted somebody to look up to us and somebody to see us. And we go through our whole life just wanting to be seen.
And be loved.
And be loved. And so what Psychosomatic, the therapist, does is it, first we see each other. Mm-hmm. And I see you and me, and you see me and you, because we're all one. And really what it does is it awakens the soul that's been waiting there for so long, for so many years, waiting to be seen. Like how many times have we looked in the mirror, you know, and combed our hair, and we just go look there. And sometimes, there's times that when I've got, you know, I got drunk and looked in the mirror and things start looking funny. And that's actually part of the process of seeing your soul. But I didn't know that then. But the therapy is at the soul connection. Mm-hmm. And when we look into each other's eyes, we see the soul. And it's like, hey, I recognize it, I see you for who you are, and have absolutely no judgment. And the other one thing that doing the psychosomatic therapy.
Did you notice a change in yourself?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We actually have, I have a before and after picture. Mm-hmm. And here's the before picture. And here's the after picture. Now, do you see the difference between the before and after?
They're different, but I don't know how they're different.
Well, and the
one's lighter than the other.
One's lighter, and people have said, well, you just got, you know, background lighting in there in the second one. Well, I tell you what, that if you look at the first one, if you look at my eyes, they have this vacant kind of gaze, right? And that came from, you know, hey, I was lost, right? And I was living outside of my body.
I thought you're not supposed to lose things.
I said I was lost before I found myself.
Okay. Just making sure I got it right.
And second picture, the after picture, if you notice my eyes, they've actually lit up. It's like, you know, I found myself, and I have a sense of purpose. But it does also this kind of, there's like this light around me, and some people go, well, it's because of the lighting in the background and whatnot. Sure,
it may, what you felt inside.
It may have been a sunnier day or whatever, but I can tell you it had been an enlightening experience. And really, I don't, well, I was going to say, I don't give a crap what anyone says. I'm just, I've been it and I've lived it, and so I believe it.
So at Astral, are you going to be able to do readings for people now?
Yes, at Astral, I would love to do readings for people.
Wonderful.
Now, when you say readings, there's a...
I don't know the terminology that you use.
There's
will you do sessions with people?
Yes.
Okay.
And
so
this therapy is only requires about 3 to 4 sessions. It's not a one where you got to keep coming back to, because the therapy is basically, I give you the tools for you to
go work with.
And that's bringing awareness to your posture, where the blockages are in your body. And I also make notes, right? And I give you the notes. The notes are not for me. You know, like most practices, the therapist takes the notes and he puts them in his filing cabinet. Well, I don't. I give you the notes because it's your stuff,
yeah.
right?
I know he gives people notes.
It starts off with a consultation, and it's about an hour. And
How about a learning session? Would you do a learning session here at Astral for us?
most definitely,
An
yes.
introductory session?
An introductory session for sure.
Okay, so we can get you in on an evening and you can do an introductory session.
Right, and there I can go into further description of what each step
Step
in
is,
in the psychosomatic process is.
Excellent.
For sure.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to having you for that.
Thank you.
Now, there's one more modality that we haven't even touched on that you've embarked on, and that's the remote viewing. So how does that fit into your life? Like, how did you go from psychosomatic therapy to remote viewing, and what did you get out of that?
Well, I was inspired to doing the remote viewing training by Paul Elder, who actually came.
Where did you meet Paul Elder?
I met Paul Elder here at Astral Connections. Again, this place literally is a place where we make connections, without a doubt.
Thank you.
And the reason I believe that, hey, each one of us that come here, we're all part of this puzzle, right? We all have this function, and we all need to get together and mesh together that, hey, you know,
And create something new.
and create something big.
Yeah, big.
As
Okay.
in,
I like that.
and that's actually just reminded me of this other presentation that that I have coming up as well, and it's about secrets of the Mayan calendar unveiled,
Cool.
and which has got to do with conscious co-creation,
Neat.
how we all come together and co-create our life, and this is what the Mayans actually predicted. Back whenever they were around, I forget when it was.
It was quite a while ago.
But you know how we talk about human beings evolving?
All I know about them is their calendar elements this year.
Like we talk about evolution, and we look at, you know, our legs evolving and just the form, and we seldom talk about our consciousness evolving.
That's
right?
a good point, yeah.
And that's where the Mayans noticed that, hey, you know, they have this time, this space, and then
It appears to me as though our consciousness devolved instead of evolved.
we're always learning and growing. And and so where were we at? We're all over the board here.
We're talking
The
about
remote viewing. Okay. The remote viewing, I was inspired by Paul Elder, who came here and he did a presentation, and I went in and I took the training for that. And literally it was, we as human beings, every single one of us has this innate ability to see anything in the universe. And I too was skeptical, but I started to follow my intuition, and I took the time off work, and I spent whatever it might have been, $1,500 in taking the training. But going through each viewing, what happens is there's an envelope. There's a picture inside it. We don't know what it is, but we do a remote viewing on it, and things come up. Little blips of images come up, and how do we know those images are something that we're pulling from the universe?
Imagination or memory.
If we're pulling from the universe, or is it a construction in our brain? Well, the remote viewing process is a very methodical process that has been refined and
By the military.
by the military, the CIA, and all those guys, you know, the Russian spies and all that. That's all true, by the way.
Is it okay to say that?
Yeah,
Okay, just checking.
it's all true, because ultimately remote viewing cannot be used for any kind of malintent. Even though it may have been, in some cases, people may have got away with it, but there always is pretty much divine intervention when that process is.
There's always divine intervention when you do anything, Mel, anyways.
You're right, but I'm even talking even as a person's doing the viewing.
The viewing, oh, interesting,
Yeah.
okay.
And but I some examples I can give which hit home with me is we did this viewing and I basically saw like it was like this hole in the sky, and it had ring bands around it, right? And it's almost like a vortex. I'm like, I have never seen anything like this before. We don't know what what it is, and so I write down it's like a gateway, some kind of energy center, and it feels like it's got this holiness to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we're doing the viewing, we get the feedback, and he showed us what it was, and it was the temple on the rock.
The dome of the rock?
The dome on the rock, where
oh, neat.
it's believed to be the gateway where what's the guy ascended?
Stargate 1?
No.
Oh, just checking.
Anyway, it's just
Jesus, Moses?
no.
What guy that just...
The Muslim guy.
Muhammad?
Muhammad, or so one of those guys. So even and I knew nothing of this. I'm not a religious guy.
Okay.
But having
I kind of knew that one a little bit.
having that experience, I give you another one. I saw all these. I understand what a soul is now, and I've met some spirits, and I used to never believe in that kind of thing. And it's nothing like what you see on TV, where the guys and their flashlights and they're going on with their gigometers or whatever they have. It's nothing like that. It's for me what I feel is I feel a presence. I feel love. But it's also accompanied by colors, and it kind of dances and comes in and out. And so I have met spirit and spirits of many people that have passed on.
Did you meet them all after your remote viewing experiences?
During the remote viewing experiences and after.
Wow.
And
So the remote viewing actually took you there?
yes. And I give you one very interesting viewing that we did, where I just seen a whole swirl of souls, and I'm talking a
What
lot.
did souls look like?
Well, just picture it as energy vortexes,
Okay.
right? And there's a whole swirl of them, there's like a mass. I'm like, what is this? How can there be so many all at once? And
Like
they all
gaseous stars?
like it's like a gaseous Milky Way, and they're all heading somewhere. And I'm like, what is this? And I had
Were you part of them or observing?
I was not part of it. No, I was just
You were
observing. And then other people had drawn in the class had drawn this kind of a cloud-like structure. And the other thing is in remote viewing, we never put a label on anything, because once we put a label on something, then we kick in our
Mental side.
yeah,
left brain.
our left brain, which starts to add on and start constructing. And so
words take you away from your right brain? Is that true? Yes, I guess they do.
well, no, it's okay to use words to describe, as in it reminds me of, but if if there's things that come up, just say we saw something that was a pyramid shape,
Right.
right? We wouldn't write down, pyramid.
Right.
We would say reminds me of a pyramid,
Right.
or actually draw it out would be more suitable.
Right.
Because once we put a label on it, then that triggers our left brain to go into construction mode, and before we know it, we're putting camels around it,
Right.
and
Oh, I
sand
see.
and whatnot,
I get it.
rather than continue on with the viewing, and that pyramid could actually end up being the steeple of a church, for
Right.
example. But let's get back to the swirling souls.
Okay.
What that was actually it was Hiroshima.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
And we had that was just amazing to
Probably very emotional.
see. It was emotional. It really was emotional. Even now,
No,
it's
you can
coming
feel
back
it.
up. And the interesting thing is we did a couple of remote viewings for 2012 onwards, and some of that soul swirling came up again. So
That's interesting.
that's interesting. I guess there's going to be a few people leave this planet.
2012 is this year, by the way.
Well, 2012, 2013. It's hard to put a time on these events, but
Hiroshima was pretty big, so hopefully it's not that big.
no, there's no
Indication.
there's no indication, and we do have a lot of flooding going on. There were a lot of hurricanes. The energies of the earth are changing, and
So maybe you could, one of these days, also do an intro to remote viewing
for sure.
demonstration for
For
us.
sure. Just let me finish on that, where we're going with the energies of the earth. It's like right now we're in this transition phase where we got a lot of masculine energy in the world, and there's this feminine coming through, and it's going to come through, and no matter what, no matter how much resistance, the masculine, I want to remain in power kind of thing is ultimately is going to have to yield, because the feminine is coming through, and it's coming in a way that some people will have to, they will have to leave the planet in order for this to come through. And but it's all just going to take us to higher grounds, to higher vibration.
You might want to elaborate a little bit by what you mean by feminine energies coming through. I mean, I see feminines all the time everywhere.
Well, we can think of feminine energy as, if you want to think of it in terms of our mind will be the male energy, our intuition will be our feminine.
Okay.
Right? The nurturing component of things, the creativity rather than the doing, and we're going to be more of just more of a being rather than a doing.
Community. Reality.
And less control on ourselves and wanting to control others, and it's just it's all over the place. There's even this song by my favorite band, U2, and some of the words I forget. It goes like the women of the
What song?
get on your boots. But and there and Bono, he's actually a messenger, by the way. He's a very strong messenger. If you look at the lyrics in his songs, he is a very strong messenger.
For you?
No, for everyone that tunes in, right? But in that song, he says that the women of the future hold a big revelation. And when he says, the women of the future, he also was referring to the feminine. And in fact, guys, every human being, we have this duality of male, female, and on our body, our left side is our feminine side, and our right side
is our masculine.
And it switches in our mind, right? And so if there's anything that happens on the left side, that usually means, hey, pay attention to this intuitive part, and whatever chakra.
What if something happens on both sides? Well,
then you really gotta wake up and pay attention.
Okay, just checking.
And another interesting thing about psychosomatics is we actually create our accidents, right? It's a response from our body saying an accident is an act that makes us look inside, accident. And because ultimately that we're being overdriven, we're allowing ourselves to be overdriven, right? And our body goes, okay, that's it, time out.
How did you break down accident again?
An act that makes us look inside.
Okay.
Right? And depending on which area of the body it is in, it's basically something that we are overdoing.
Okay.
And ultimately, and it doesn't even matter if...
Must be talking too much, my throat's hurting today.
And believe me, I've fractured my pelvis, my skull, sprained my wrists, and I've been in a whole bunch, so there's a lot of introspection I still have to complete. But and that's part of the process of doing the psychosomatic consulting is we just go through the accidents that we've had in our lifetime, along with any diseases, and and basically relate them back and get us on a path to healing, right? And letting go, because ultimately that's what it comes down to is we come back home to our bodies. One more thing that I observed in doing the practice is that a lot of healers are sent my way.
The healer of healers, are
and now I know why. It's because, and I have my own personal testimony to this, is because as healers, we spend a lot of time healing others, but not doing any healing for ourselves. And ultimately, a lot of us, we spend a lot of time outside of our body and out there in the outer world and helping other people and nurturing other people instead of coming back home and nurturing ourselves, right? And when we nurture ourselves, then it gives us that much more vibration and energy to give to others, right? And that's pretty much it. It's a healer for healers. There's a couple of nurses now that I've done some practices on, and they've basically, admitted, it's. I think it's. I'm not sure where it comes from, but it's just. And I've had the same challenge with coming back and just addressing the issues in my own tissues. It was uncomfortable for me to do, and I actually can't do it on my own. I need somebody else, another therapist to help me. Right?
So that you can be true to yourself.
So that I can heal myself. And I've used other psychosomatic therapists. I've done some past life regression and hypnotherapy. Yoga is another one where helps me get centered. And it all comes back to, hey, we're nothing on our own, right? And it takes it takes all of us to help each other and and nurture each other and bring awareness to each other. right? Because it's hard to face ourselves on the own, you know. We hear about these guys that go up to the mountains and, you know, get the answers. Well, I'm not one of those guys. I need some other people,
At least
to help
not
me
yet.
figure it out.
At least not yet.
Not yet, no.
Well, thanks, Dennis. Do you have anything you want to share with the audience? Because I'm kind of exhausted my questions. Just be.
Just, you know, when you wake up in the morning and you look at yourself in the mirror, just think of it. Think of the feeling of, you know, have you ever been going home to grandma or to your parents, you know, or to a loved one after an extended absence? You know, that feeling of going home? Well, let's say that's the kind of feeling that I got when I actually came home to my body, was that, hey, I just,
Thank you, Dennis.
time out, I get too emotional, but thank you very much.
Thank
The
you.
feeling of coming home is just, it's just phenomenal. And I would love for anyone just to, just give me a
Do
call.
you guys see the passion? Like, this is real. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you.